Hey guys, welcome back.
Hey guys, brand new podcast.
Hey, wait a minute. It's my podcast.
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
Enjoy. The game time has changed 3 times. 3 times, not by half an hour.
Yeah.
At first it was 9 and noon. Then it was like 1 and 4. Now it's 2 and 6. And I'm like, I can't plan anything. I have another kid that
I'm
has
exhausted
play.
thinking about having kids in the future. Like, how do you plan your time? Because I have all these ambitions of, I want to like be involved in sports and all these things. And I'm like, man,
It's really
sports
challenging.
just feel like they're getting more and more intense at every single level.
They are. You know, the thing about high school, I hope no one from her team is listening to this. They don't
Yeah.
really know who I am, so hopefully not. But I keep thinking, really 5 practices a week
Right.
and a game, at least one game? Really? I mean, piano's gone.
Yeah.
And the only thing I keep standing my ground on is if they have a schedule, fine, then we'll stick to that schedule. But if something keeps adding and it's displacing Girl Scouts,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. She's been in Girl Scouts since she was in 2nd grade.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have her leave these girls high and dry because you have changed your schedule. But I mean, like today, this happens every week. Oh, by the way, I need some royal blue softball socks. They don't just sell those just like, on the corner store. You have to go find them.
I think
like,
I'm wearing some.
Yeah, you are, with mustaches. They're perfect. But I'm like, okay, and you need those, by tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, I now have to drive to Glendale, which is 30 minutes from here,
Yeah.
which is the closest sporting goods store because I can go to Big Five, but they don't have, they don't have anything. So tonight we're going home. She goes, So I need a long sleeve Under Armour shirt for tomorrow. I'm like, I can't help you. I have something going on right now, actually, that I'm late for, and I'm not going to Dick's Sporting Goods
Right.
at 9.
Yeah.
I'm just not. So, we'll have to figure something else out.
They need to choose a sport that doesn't have all that equipment. Like in high school, I did swim and water polo.
No equipment.
Speedo, that's all you need.
Right? No helmet for that?
No helmet, nothing.
Mouth guard?
Nope, nothing.
Wow.
Yeah,
No
was great.
fins on your feet?
nothing.
That
No
would help,
fins.
right?
Yeah, it's all great. Fins would be great. Yeah.
Fins would be helpful, right? Now, you're tall, but you still couldn't touch the ground, right?
No, so it's supposed to be just an all deep end pool. Most pools are, but some of them here in the valley are. So I went to Alamany and it was half
You went
shallow.
to Bishop Alamany?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Half shallow, half deep. And so in the shallow end, the goal is bigger, so you're technically not supposed to touch the ground, but you do and whatever. But technically, real water polo, it's all deep end pool. No one's touching the ground. You can't. It's 8 feet plus
Right.
deep. So yeah,
Only Andre the Giant.
yeah, exactly.
That's a hard sport, isn't it?
It's wrestling in water with a ball thrown in the mix.
It's insane.
Yeah. It's dirty too.
Is it?
Well, yeah, they make you check your nails to see if you have like sharp nails before you actually start a game. They're supposed to, guys, because you're kicking and scratching your toenails, your fingernails, that's all you got.
You're kidding.
Yeah. And then pulling suits, and it's all underwater, so the refs can't see what's going on under the water.
That's
so
crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I have a friend whose kid is at Bishop Alamany. She loves it. She's so happy
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. I liked
She loves it. Oh,
It was good. Yeah.
Good.
No complaints.
Well, let's talk about how you pay for private school. Since I
Sure.
invited you here,
Yeah.
talk about money.
Seems
So,
impossible.
I have to say this for people listening. Leo is Bert's business manager. So a business manager helps you make business decisions.
Yep.
Would that be right?
Yeah.
And part of that is how to manage your money.
Big part of it.
Big
Yeah.
part of it. Not
Yeah.
all of it.
Not
because
all of it.
you
Yeah.
definitely help with strategy and
Yeah.
planning and
And it's also personal decisions too. It's, as you know, it's like it all sort of bleeds together. And so when you're talking about business, then all of a sudden you're talking about personal finances and how it all shapes together. So
Yeah.
it's a generic business manager, but it encompasses a lot.
it does encompass
Yeah.
a lot. And I can say this, since we started working with you, Bert's business has really flourished and
Yeah.
thrived. So I think obviously what you do is very important and helpful, but I think his energetic focus on money or saying, hey, I need a professional to help me,
Right.
actually makes that money grow energetically.
Yeah, the goal is for it to take the stress off of Bert and off of you, and so that you can focus on the things that are the money makers and not worry about where the money goes and organizing it and planning for it and all of that, and relying on someone that you feel confident, hopefully, and trust, and let them help you make those decisions.
Yes. Well, it's been a blessing to me. I went to lunch with Joey Diaz's wife today, who does what I did before you took over, all the bookkeeping, all the prepping for the CPA. And she was telling me, because she's in the thick of it now, right? And I kept thinking, I am so glad I don't have that job anymore. Yeah. It's so overwhelming.
Well, it's stressful, especially when it's not something that you do day in and day out. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I'm comfortable with all of these things because I literally live in it day in and day out. And I have this entire team of people that have specialties, in tax and in accounting and all these different areas that we get to rely on each other because we're doing it constantly.
Right.
But it's stressful when you're one person doing it, whether it's once a year or, it's brand new to you this one year, whatever it is. It becomes stressful because you don't think you're doing it right. You don't know who to ask. You're nervous about asking because you don't want to share information that you don't know whether it's right or wrong. So, yeah. Very stressful.
Well, that's something you had said to me when I asked you to do this podcast. And I was saying, I told a friend of mine that we were going to talk about money, and she got really excited because she said, I feel really lost with money. I feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing with money, if I'm doing the right thing, if it's too late for me to do the right thing. And something you had said to me was, it's really important to have peers that you can talk to so you can compare notes.
Yeah.
And I guess people just don't talk about their money,
it's
right?
Like it's the culturally, we're all kind of, I wouldn't say taught, but it's the culture that you don't share, right? I don't want to tell you what I'm making. I shouldn't ask you what you're making, how much money you have in the bank, how much money should I have in the bank. Mm-hmm. No one talks about it openly. And I think one of the things you were saying, which I think hopefully most people have, is they have that friend or that person that you do unleash all that information on, right? And sometimes it's our parents, sometimes it's whomever.
Right.
But it's that channel where you get to let it all out and go like, am I doing it right? And so being able to find someone, whether it's a professional or a group of people, friends, whomever, that you can share it all with and say, full disclosure, this is what I've got going on. I'm nervous that I don't have enough, or how do I compare? We're all trying to figure that out together.
Yeah, we do have a couple that we, as individuals and as a couple, will talk about money. And, hey, I just refinanced my house. I got 3.1. And this is how I did it. And we've done that with each other for years now. And it is really helpful. And I think, honestly, it helps us grow as individuals because we go, oh, well, if they can do it, well, I can totally do that.
Well, we're all doing it, right? I mean, everyone's doing it, but no one knows if you're making the right decisions or missing something. You always think that person has a secret. They must be doing something I'm not doing, right? And no one knows. And how much should I save? Are they saving more than me?
Right.
Are they making more?
Right.
I'm not sure. So I mean, the more open you can be and transparent with people, I think the thing that I've learned is, no one laughs at you when you say, hey, I make this much or I've saved this much. Everyone generally is pretty kind about it and says like, well, this is what I do. And it's not taught in school necessarily unless you're focusing on it, right?
No.
Elementary school, I remember the closest thing that I had was, I think in second or third grade, our teacher just made us keep a checkbook for points in the class, right? And it was like, you earned some number of points and you wrote it down in your checkbook and you had to balance it. And he kept track of it and he'd always check and see if your balance matched his. It was fascinating, right?
Super smart.
Super smart. But that's not a common thing for people to learn. So
no, it's not. I've talked about this before on my podcast. When I was a kid, I went to private school until I went to high school. And then I moved back with my dad and I went to public school. So I was in some ways a little ahead in some ways. So by the time I got to be a senior, I had taken everything. I had 2 PE classes and, English, math, whatever. But then they put me in a class they called business math. It was for the kids that went to vocational school who were studying to be a plumber or electrician. And it was how to apply for a loan, how to file your income taxes.
That's amazing.
How to balance your checkbook.
Yeah.
How to write a budget. It was just basic, like, living math.
Right.
Really is what it was.
The thing that everyone needs.
That everyone needs. And I remember thinking in that class, this is so boring. And after, when I got into college and I was on my own and I had to figure out a budget, figure out my student loans, and I was like, I am so glad I had that class.
Yeah.
I don't know why they don't teach that class in every high school.
Well, just everything that has a dollar sign, right? I mean, mortgages, trying to get someone to explain what a mortgage is. Everyone's so nervous, whether it's buying your first house or refinancing a mortgage. These kind of basic things that are a part of everyone's life that isn't necessarily explained. And then you go to do it and you're like, well, I know I'm supposed to buy a house, or I want to buy a house. How do I do it? A mortgage. Okay, what is that? What are rates?
Right.
All these basic things that everyone should be equipped with. But I think in general, people feel embarrassed that they don't know it and they weren't equipped with it. And then you go like, well, shoot, should I be doing it, or what's the smart thing to do? And then you don't want to ask because we're all embarrassed to ask questions that we don't know the answers to, which is silly because in general, no one's really laughing at you if you say, hey, this may be a stupid question, but I don't know the answer to it. And so we Google it or whatever, and then we're still not confident. So, yeah, it's tough. But
and it creates a little bit of fear, right? And I really believe, I don't know what you believe about money, but I believe money is energy, really. It's energy that you draw to yourself. It's abundance or lack thereof, or scarcity, or however you are drawing prosperity to yourself. Money's part of prosperity. It's not all of it.
Yeah.
But if you have a lot of fear wrapped around it, it kind of shuts it down and closes it off.
Yeah.
And especially if it's fear of something that you could simply ask a question and risk feeling stupid for 5 seconds to then alleviate all this fear.
Well, it's part of one of the favorite parts of my job is being able to field those questions. And I certainly don't claim to know the answer to every single one of them, but I'm happy to go, okay, I'm a resource that you get to say, hey, stupid question maybe, but I don't know the answer to it. What about this? Right? Refinancing. I don't have the confidence to know what a refinance is. I feel like it's something we should do, but I don't know. Is that something we can or can't do? And being able to help and say, okay, well, let's talk about the thought process behind it and whether it's a good or a bad idea, why you would do it, and what you're going to gain versus risk.
Right.
And, firsthand, what sort of the benefit and the risk can be of that. But being able to bounce that off of someone and get a little bit of confidence in you to be able to do it is really helpful, I think. Yeah.
It's very helpful for me, but I know we didn't have it until we had you.
Right.
We could do it with Bert's dad a little bit.
Yeah.
But, he's a lawyer. And he's very good with his money, but that's very different than someone who, like you said, deals with money and finances every day.
And it's hard to, sometimes we ask advice of someone who's very opinionated in one direction of that kind of a decision.
Yeah.
And then that'll sway, that you can see culturally or in certain households, decisions are made in one direction or the other because of how the elderling of that family has felt about it and disseminated that information.
Boy, isn't that the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was always taught that having money was bad, that it was selfish.
Right.
People that had money were typically selfish, self-centered, not generous, stingy, nasty, only out for what they could get. And so for a long time, I think I blocked having money until I went, wait, no, actually, you can be a very lovely, normal, regular, generous,
it doesn't have to
beautiful
dictate
human being.
who you are,
No, why can't you just stay who you are, rich or poor? But that definitely was the rhetoric I grew up with. Anybody rich is definitely ill-begotten gains. There's no way they're on the up and up.
So why was it something that was portrayed that way to you, do you think?
Culturally, I think it was very culturally, that the mindset.
Yeah.
The banker's definitely going to screw you.
Right.
And I grew up with my dad. Everything was, and it still is for him, dealt with on a barter system, which he feels is much more fair.
Yeah.
He's a mechanic. I don't think he's paid a doctor bill or a dentist bill. He doesn't pay for his drugs at the pharmacy. He doesn't, let's see, what was it the other day?
That's fascinating.
He traded, we sent him our car and he bartered for that repair work.
Right.
He just doesn't pay for anything with money because in their community, I would literally go to the gas station. Mr. Stiles had a tally of how much money I spent. And then Mr. Stiles would take his car down to my dad's and get whatever needed. And he'd bring that tally and they'd even it out somehow. And no money would change hands. And so in my community, that's a much more legit, honest way of doing business.
Right. Yeah.
But then you go, the rest of the world, right? Can't really put a mortgage on a house with a barter. Here's 2 pigs and 8 ducks, and here's my house. It doesn't work that way anymore for most people.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally, my dad, I was just talking to him about, he's having a problem with his tooth. And I'm like, well, why don't you go see Dr. Brock? He's like, he's retired. I don't have a dentist anymore. I'm like, Daddy, there's like 3 dentists in our hometown. Yeah. I'm not paying for a dentist.
He can't work out a bartering system with them?
That's what I said. I said, they got cars. They can't work on their cars. No, I don't work like that for everybody. They're young people. They don't know how that works. Okay. Okay, Daddy. Okay. But yeah, the kind of the banker, the people who didn't function in that system were definitely a little suspect.
Right.
They were a little suspect. They were definitely something shady when you use real money.
It's fascinating. Yeah.
It is fascinating. My other grandfather, my mom's dad, didn't use a bank. So he had this one wall in his house. He would just shove money in the wall.
Yeah.
And I kept thinking, what happens if the house catches on fire? Like that shit's paper, right? It's gone. And apparently he would put money in jars and bury them in the backyard.
Yeah.
And he knew where they were. But I kept saying, what if something happens to you? Nobody knows where it is. Yeah. And he's really wealthy. He has like 400 acres of land and all this actual money.
Stuff buried everywhere.
That's just, yes. And I was like, what happens when you're gone? The squirrel's going to be real rich, but we don't know where anything is.
I mean, that still exists. I still talk to people who don't believe in bank accounts or were taught not to trust banks or credit cards or anything like that.
Seriously? In LA?
Yeah, it's still like, I get blown away by it, but it is still a real fear that's driven into people or taught into people. And they're all just tools to use to help, build wealth or financial stability, whatever you want to say.
Right.
Credit cards are a fascinating one for people and people's thought process on credit cards, paying them down or not understanding that it is debt that you ultimately owe and that it doesn't just disappear. Right. And there's a lot of trouble that you can get yourself into, but everyone's nervous about it. People don't, I think if you accumulate debt on a credit card, you then don't want to talk about it because it's maybe embarrassing or whatever it is. But you can get yourself in trouble, and then you even more so don't want to talk about it. And the thought process behind why you have it and what to do with it.
Right.
Certain people are taught, don't have a credit card because it'll only get you in trouble. Well, I think it depends on how you're taught how to use it. It's borrowing money that you don't have to pay any interest on if you pay it regularly. And there's all sorts of points and rewards and all that stuff that you can benefit from nowadays. But unfortunately, you can get yourself in trouble with it if you don't treat it accordingly.
You just have to be disciplined.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's with your own money in general, and in my business, I try and treat everyone's money as if it's my own, respect it as if it's my own, because, it's something we work really hard for, and you don't want to just be frivolous with it. Like, what are you doing?
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That you're not frivolous with my money. Thank you. Or our money, I should say. So, what drew you to this career?
So, my career is interesting because most people don't necessarily know what a business manager is, and they focus on accounting, right? And it's, you do people's taxes or you do their accounting. And it's a lot more than that. And the thing that drew me to it is that it is not simply, and this isn't to discredit accountants or, people that work in the IRS, but I went to school for finance and I went through it and quickly kind of realized or decided coming out of it that I didn't want to be a stockbroker or any of the traditional career paths of someone who gets a finance degree. And so I started looking around and seeing what else was out there in this world of business, right? Getting a business degree. And so I started reaching out to family friends and whoever I could that was in business or successful in business, whatever that meant, a head of a company or a CEO or I don't know. And so in talking to them all, I was like, listen, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? And they said the best way to learn a company is, through accounting. If you know the books, then you'll know that you'll understand the company and everything from there. It's a really good building block. So if you don't know what you ultimately want to do, I'd start there. And so I said, oh, okay, well, I'll start looking at accounting jobs and what that means. And I started looking at, I think I made a lot of people laugh when I started saying I'm looking at jobs in the IRS and all of that. And my mentality was, well, I'll learn all the loopholes in the IRS and then, I'll come out of it and whatever.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I was looking at that and accounting jobs, and then just out of luck of a family friend of a friend, learned about business management and the entertainment industry in LA, and everything's, so much is tied to it in LA. But learned about, it's this niche industry that works with people in the entertainment industry and all in front of the camera, behind the camera, touring, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I got fascinated by it because I was like, wow, it's this interactive thing with fun people. And the more I learned about it, the more it became, well, you get to interact with people and help them make decisions and, help them with things that maybe they're uncomfortable with or not trained in, right? A lot of entertainers are very good with the art, but then, they get paychecks that they don't know what to do with or how to manage and how to pay the team and who to employ and how to employ them and all these complicated decisions and things that come with it that, again, they're not trained on, and they kind of find their way through it as they become more and more successful. So I was really drawn to it. And so I luckily was hired by a firm and made my way through it and learned and, really, really enjoyed interacting with people and actually feeling like I was helping and making a difference. And so it brought me to where I am today. It's been a really fun and fascinating thing. There's so much exposure, real world exposure that I get to see amongst all of our clients, and it relates to my own life. And it's interesting talking to friends of mine who most of my friends' careers are very one-directional. And sometimes we'll get into conversations, whether it's about a mortgage or about student loans or whatever, retirement accounts, college savings accounts when they have kids. And they go, how do you, don't you just do accounting? Why? How do you know about that
all
or this?
that, right?
And I go, I've picked it up because I'm exposed to all these things.
Right.
I think most of my friends don't know the depth of what I do. Most people just assume it's accounting or taxes.
Yeah.
And,
Most people who, when I say Bert's business manager, that's all they think you do too.
Right. Yeah.
And I go, that's not actually it.
Yeah.
There's he's in a lot of meetings with us that have to do with not creative, but with strategy, with planning and foreseeing what's coming ahead and how to pay for that and how to save for that. And
well, I thought there are a lot of nuances just to be in the room or on a phone call or whatever that hopefully I can add value or say, what, we can take advantage of this if we treat it this way or that. And sometimes there aren't, but at least being on the call or in the room, hopefully there's some benefit that I can help find or steer the discussion so there's a way to find it.
I feel like you're the money lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Like there's a lawyer. Yeah. And then you're the money lawyer.
Yeah.
So.
That's going to go on my business card. Money lawyer.
Money lawyer.
Yeah.
Esquire. Leo Esquire. Okay. So in my house, this is what I do with my kids. You tell me what you think about this.
Okay.
They get $20 a week.
Okay.
They get it every Sunday. It is not an earned income. They get it because they live in our house.
Okay.
Now they have chores,
Yeah.
but the chores aren't relative to the earning.
They're not linked. They're not.
Correct.
Okay.
Because I think I read a book that said that allowance is just because you're part of the family.
Okay.
And then chores is just because you're part of the family. You're not earning money
Sure.
through chores. They're both because you are part of this team.
Yeah.
Right? Sometimes you do things you don't want to do for no money when
Right.
you are at your office.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, you get money because you get money.
Yeah.
So I give them $20 a week, and I ask that they put 10% into savings and 10% into basically tithing.
Okay.
And then whatever they want to do with the 80% is up to them.
Yeah.
However, if they're going to the movies with their friends, they pay for that.
Okay.
If they're going to the movies with us, family, we
Yeah.
pay for that.
Right.
You and your sister want to walk to Minchie's? That's on you.
Yeah.
We take you to Minchie's? That's on us.
Right.
That's what we do. That's how I'm trying to teach them how to deal with their money.
So when I was growing up, my dad, our allowance was based on our chores, and I think I haven't thought about it in a long time, but I think it was $2 for mowing the lawn, $2 for picking up after the dog, that sort of stuff, right? So
okay.
you try and accumulate it, and it was always in an envelope, and on the back of the envelope, he would sit down with us, and it was when money went in, we'd write on it, and you'd balance it, right? How much is in it, how much you've added, make sure it all adds up, you're good. And if money comes out of it, same thing. You got to mark it. So it's a little checkbook on the back of an envelope.
Yeah.
So that was the early on with that. And I don't know which one I've never thought of it the way that you just presented it, as allowance is not like a rewards-based system. It is what it is. And then chores are because you're part of the family. I kind of like that.
Well, Isla Kreischer would do no chores for no money because she does not give a crap. Georgia would have $1,000 a week because she'd want the money. And I was like, well, how do we, when I read that in the book, I went, okay, this is how you level the playing field.
Right.
You feed the dog because they're your dogs too.
Yeah.
And
right.
that's it.
Yeah.
Sorry. The chores are chores. I take the garbage out every day. I don't get paid for that.
Yeah.
So, but I like the way your dad did it too, because he taught you how to balance and all that
A
stuff.
little bit of that. I thought that was beneficial, but it's fascinating because I've my brother, who we're very close in age, and he's only a year older, and how different two siblings can be,
Right.
raised almost identically.
Right.
And it was money. Allowance would come in, great. I can go spend it on whatever it is, right? A
Right.
video game or whatever.
Right.
And for me, it was, how much can I accumulate in this envelope? And my dad just, he would always laugh about me stockpiling it, and we'd go to Toys R Us or whatever, and like, okay, guys, you got full envelopes. What are you going to do? And I would be conservative, and it's fascinating how my brother's like, well, I'll just earn more next week.
Yeah.
So I can spend this on whatever I want. And I would be like, yeah, but if you don't spend it,
Right.
you got more for the next time. But then it just, so it's fascinating. I think we're kind of, there's something inherent in us that makes us think certain ways. It's not just how we're raised.
Oh, I think this is absolutely right, because Isla will not spend a red nickel. Still, it's hard
Yeah.
for me to even get her to donate the money that's set aside for that purpose.
Right.
She made me buy her a fireproof safe for her room that she keeps her cash in.
She values it that much.
If anything happens, she's grabbing that safe. I mean, screw the cat and the dog. She's getting that fireproof safe. It's got a key.
Yeah.
And she gave me one key, and she has a key, and that money goes in that safe. And
Bert doesn't have a key?
No. Would you give Bert a key? Bert doesn't have a key to my safe,
Yeah.
to our safe that has all our emergency
Yeah.
cash in it. No. I
Yeah.
have that key.
What emergency cash?
We have some emergency cash. Do you need to know
No, I'm
about it?
kidding.
No, when he was working and bringing home cash from T-shirts, we were like, let's just put like a bunch of cash.
Yeah.
If there's, natural disaster.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a ton of cash.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we have like $2,000.
Yeah.
So that we can
Just
eat.
in case. Yeah, absolutely.
Buy gasoline at a premium price.
Hopefully the dollar's worth something in that state of emergency.
In
We're
the
not
apocalypse.
bartering
Yeah.
with something else. But yeah.
That and the motorcycle Bert's going to purchase that all four of us can fit on
Sure.
in the
Yeah.
apocalypse. I can't quite figure out either. But anyway,
Yeah.
so that's how we kind of deal with money in our house. I wanted to know what your advice would be for someone, let's just start like in each decade of life. You're just out of college, you're in your 20s. What should you be doing with your money? Like my kids do 10% here, 10% there, keep 80%. If you're 20 and just out of college, what should you do? Should you pay off your student loans? Should you?
Yeah, student loans are tough because my brain always goes to long term, right? And my favorite story behind that is I have a friend who he had a great job, sort of straight out of college, and he was talking about, well, they provide us with a 401k matching, right? They match.
Ooh, that's good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But if you're not taught, then you think, yeah, but it's not going into my bank account. It doesn't feel like real money because you can't touch it. You can't, without penalties and whatnot, but you can't really touch it. And so why would I put more in to that retirement savings? Yeah, they're matching it, but if you don't fully understand, then it's tough, and that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
Like put as much as you can that's, feasible, but if they're matching it, that's free extra money, right? If they told you they'd pay you more because you put more into something, would you do that? And he's like, yeah. Okay, well, it's the same thing. They're effectively paying you more for not just saving it.
Right. It's just deferred payment.
Deferred payment.
Yeah.
You get it in the future.
Yeah.
It's there. Almost everyone now has an online access to their 401k or their retirement, whatever it is, and you can see it. If you need to see it, log in and make sure it's going in there.
Right.
But that's where my brain first goes. The earlier you can start saving for retirement, because it's becoming astronomical what studies are showing what it's going to cost for retired living in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, as well as, sort of assisted living costs and all those things that go along with it. And when you're 20, that's not even a blip on the radar. You're not even thinking about it. But if you do it, then that savings over the course of that span of time just makes such a difference. That extra couple years of savings, as much as you can, makes a huge difference. And
because it kind of compounds, right?
Compounding interest.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I didn't know that's what it actually was.
Yeah.
But in my brain, I was thinking it just, because what's in there. Okay, explain this to me. Let me explain it to you and you tell me if it's right. Because I'll explain it from my redneck, rural Georgia. If I put in $1 and I earn 10%, then next month I have $1.10. Right?
If it's earning 10% a month, that's fantastic. Yes.
Yes, I know. I know this isn't real, but these are numbers we can understand.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? If I put $1 in and I earn 10%, then the next month I have $1.10, which will earn 10%. Right?
So that first month you earned 10 cents.
Right.
That second month you earned 11 cents.
Right.
Right. 10% of the $1.10.
Right. And then the next month you earn 10% of the $1.10. Right.
$2.21.
Yeah. So it just keeps compounding.
Or $1.21.
So my aunt, who was a teacher, retired with over $1 million in her 401k.
Yeah.
Teacher salary.
Amazing. Yeah.
She just kept pouring stuff into her 401k.
Yeah.
And when she retired, she had over $1 million in rural Georgia.
Well, some people like to think of their retirement savings where they don't even look at it. It's like this thing that they close their eyes to. They're like, I know it goes going in somewhere, and I know I'll have it in the future, and I'm not going to pay attention to it. And I'm not sure why. I think it's because it's a deduction, and you don't like to think of money coming out of your check, but it's nice to think it's saving somewhere. But I'd keep an eye on it, because I think that encourages you to save more, or keep saving, or to see it growing. And that's why I'd say, for anyone starting a retirement savings account, whatever age you are, see it, because seeing the growth of it and the accumulation is a fantastic motivator.
Right.
And I think if you do that, if I revert back to my friend, if he were looking at it and seeing the company, it's not his dollars going into it, but the company's dollars going into it, it's probably it would have been a little bit more of a motivating factor to see someone else's money going into your account.
Right.
If it was your checking or your savings account, you'd be all over it.
Totally.
Yeah, because most people monitor that like a hawk.
Totally. So we will go back to my example.
Yeah.
If I put $1 in and my company puts $1 in, now I'm earning 10% on $2, right?
Yeah.
Now I got $2.20. Now next month I put another $1 in. So I got 320, and they're putting $1 in. So now I've got 420, and that's crazy.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Compounding
I want
interest.
a 401k.
You have a
Austin,
retirement
can you
account.
match my 401k? That sounds. I would feel like I was winning the lottery every month.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
It's great.
So in your 20s, in any age.
But
in your 20s, if you could start a 401k, you're going to be in great shape.
So you've got that, right? If that's something that you can do, right? We can all set up a retirement account, even if you don't have a company paying you that has a 401k. If you don't have that, then you can set up, an IRA. There are all different types of options for retirement accounts. And so, ask TurboTax or ask your accountant, whichever one you have, H&R Block, doesn't matter. Ask, whomever. But it's such a phenomenal thing because, now let's add on to that the fact that it can go in tax-free. Before you pay taxes, it can go in there. So now you're making interest on money that you haven't paid taxes on. So it's that tip-top dollar.
Right.
Then you're adding more to the argument of having it. So that's my big one that my brain always goes to.
So then when you take money out of the 401k, are you taxed on it then?
Yeah. So
Okay.
you get taxed on it. The thought process being you put money in, especially in a time of your life where maybe you're making sort of that peak performance. You're now making really good money. You're taxed at your highest tax bracket that you're going to be taxed at, whatever that is. The theory is later in life, when you're retired, you're going to be taking out money, but you're taking it out maybe when you're not earning money. So you're in a lower tax bracket. So instead of paying taxes on it when it went in at your higher tax bracket and pay more,
Right.
when you take it out, hopefully you're in a lower tax bracket maybe, and you pay a little bit less taxes on that money after it comes out. And it's earned interest, so it's grown over time.
Right.
And then you get to take it out and be taxed less.
Okay. So for
Theoretically.
those of people like me,
Yeah.
so if your dollar is now $1 million, right? When you were in the middle, say
Yep.
you were in a 30% tax bracket in the middle.
Let's
of your
use
earning.
50% to
Okay,
make it
50.
easy, right? Let's say you're in
50%.
California and you're paying
And
the tip-top tax rate.
And it's 50%.
Yeah. So you put that dollar in. If you didn't put it in, you would have walked away with 50 cents,
Right.
right? But you put the dollar in, you didn't pay any taxes on that dollar. And then, I don't know, 50 years from then or 20 years or 10 years, maybe you're not earning that same amount. And you're not at the 50% tax bracket. You take that dollar back out. Maybe you're at the 30% or you're at 20%, whatever it is, but you're not paying 50 cents on the dollar. Now you're getting
70 cents.
70 cents out of that dollar instead of 50 cents.
Got it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Because
Yeah.
you know what? The complaint I hear from people is, well, I don't want to pay taxes on it.
Right.
Well, okay. But if you're going to pay taxes on it at some point,
Right.
that had never been explained to me.
Right.
I didn't really think of it that way, that if you pay taxes on it when you're highest bracket, it makes more sense to take it out
Yeah.
later. That makes so much sense. Okay. Not that we have all these retirement accounts, but that's
Well,
just never been explained. I didn't
And
know
there
that.
are different types, and there are some types that if you don't like that thought process, you maybe want to put money in after you've paid taxes. And there are retirement accounts that work that way as well, so that later in life, you're not paying tax on the money you take out. It's
The
free and
money's the
clear of
money.
the taxes. Yeah.
I got it. Okay. That's a different type. But a
Yeah.
401k is the type that's taxed when
Yeah.
you pull it out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So then in your 20s, say I make $100, right? I need to live on 80.
Okay.
What do I do with those $20? Do I pay off my student loan? Or
So you're taking home $100 is what you're saying,
Yeah.
right? After you paid your taxes.
everything's taxes,
right?
yes. And I need $80 of the $100. I
Yeah.
have $20 left over that I can either put in my student loans or pay off my car
Right.
or put into retirement. What do I do with that $20?
Well, there's definitely not one answer for everybody, but it's dependent on, I would say, yeah, if you have student loans or you have a car loan or things like that, that's where interest rates maybe come into play. And you say, how much money are you paying on that student loan? Are you paying interest on it, right? And if it's this exorbitant interest rate, like a credit card is a great example, right? If you're paying 20% on
Right.
a credit card, these crazy rates,
Right.
I'd say get your credit card paid down faster than you start stockpiling money in the bank.
Right.
Because you're never going to, not never, but generally you're not going to make more by investing that $20 than the amount that the credit card is charging you in interest.
Right.
So you're kind of playing these things off each other to see where your money is best spent, right? Is it your student loan because you're paying interest on that? Or if you don't have to pay interest, is it just free money that has been loaned to you? And until that they're charging you interest, I wouldn't necessarily pay attention to that.
Right.
And focus on the things that, interest is to your point about compounding interest when you save it, interest can hurt you when you're having to pay for it.
Right.
Because you're just paying someone else for them to effectively loan you money,
Right.
whether it's a credit card or a car loan or whatever it is.
Whatever, yeah.
And it's not bad. We get loans all the time for a mortgage or for a car loan because these are things that you don't want to shell out that massive amount of money all at once, and it
Right.
makes it more affordable to borrow the money.
Right.
And that's why people, even that have the money in the bank, maybe don't pay cash for a house and they take a loan because they think, well, I can make, if I have a 4% interest rate, let's say on my house, I can earn 5, 6, 7% in the stock market or whatever else you want to invest in. So I'd rather make 5% and pay 4%, and I've made 1%
Right.
on whatever money.
On the same cash.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a roundabout way of answering. There's not one way to do it, but I think when you're young, in your 20s, for this example, I'd steer myself away from having too much debt because there's plenty of opportunity later in life for you to
Right.
get a mortgage and car payments and all that stuff. So trying not to let debt accumulate too early would always be my advice. Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
And I always say, this is the way I always thought. If I only had that $20 of my 100 and only had 20, I would put 2 in savings.
Right.
Just to be in the habit
Yeah.
of putting 2 in savings.
Yeah.
And then as I got more money, like as I paid off my debts, I'd increase that
Right.
amount I put in savings. But the habit of putting something aside was really important to me when I was
Yeah.
young and broke. I'd go, well, at least if I have, because I know this is another thing that you say to us, you should have a certain amount of cash money in savings, right? How much should you have in savings?
Well, it's kind of dependent upon your lifestyle, and some people are more conservative than others, but
I don't mean how much money, dollar
Yeah.
amount, but like
well, I mean,
1
you
month
should, yeah,
living
you should always,
expenses or
yeah, I mean, how risky do you want to live your life, right? Some people want a year's worth of expenses covered
Right.
sitting in the bank, and
Right.
other people think, well, if I have a couple months, if I lost my job today and I had a couple months worth of savings in the bank and I could find a job in a couple months. And other people say, well, I'd rather not cut it that close and have 2 years in the bank.
right.
Again, it's kind of personal preference on how risk averse you are in that sort of scenario. I always think, you should have 6 months to a year in savings, not locked up in something.
Right.
Have the ability to
Access
have
that.
But it depends on your lifestyle, and in some regard that's not feasible, and in others it is.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think to your point, habits and habitual stuff is from an early age or whatever age you want to start, getting in the habit of paying attention to what you have and tracking it. I've used Quicken since I was in my late
20s?
teens or 20s. Yeah,
too, yeah.
Always had it, and it was just a great way of. It was always there, and I could see what was going on, and they have charts and things like that that show you if your savings going up, if you spent more than you earned or whatever. I think that's really important, and the habit of saving, no matter how much it is,
Right.
the habit of making sure you put something away, I think is a great habit to get into, and the earlier you can do it, the better.
Right. And it's super easy now because you can just automatically transfer
Yeah.
from your checking to your
Right.
savings, $20 a month.
Exactly.
Or set it up and you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
That's another thing I think too is really important is I know the people I knew that had financial problems were the people who did not open their mail on a regular basis.
Oy, yeah.
I mean, I open my mail every day and I sort it. Like I may not, when I was paying our bills before we hired
Right.
you guys, I didn't pay it every day. I paid it every Wednesday.
Yeah.
But I had a folder I would open it. This is garbage. This is something I need to address, and this is a bill to pay. And I'd sit down on Wednesday and pay all my bills.
Right.
So I knew that day that nothing's due within 7 days of when you receive it. So generally speaking, that was a good way to function. But I know people that don't open their mail for weeks, and I think it's crazy.
I don't know if that's fear-based because you know what's coming and you don't want to open it, whether it's a credit card bill or whatever it is. I always go to people tend to ignore the things that they don't want to address because they either don't understand it or they fear it or they don't know what questions to ask. I mean, I think that relates generally to a lot of things. If you're asked to do something, you're going to kind of drag your feet. Mm-hmm. If you're nervous about asking a question back about it on how to do it or a bill that you know you don't want to pay, so you drag it out and you kind of go, well, if I don't open this notice from the IRS, maybe it'll just go away.
It'll just go away.
Yeah.
And then what you don't really face is the fact that you're incurring fees.
Yeah, you're hurting yourself.
Problems. And, something too I think people have a hard time with is a budget.
Yeah.
Is living within their means and saying, I make that $100.
Yeah.
I can't spend 120.
Right.
Because I don't got it.
Well, that's the best thing about like what you're doing with your daughters. It's cash, right? It's once you start putting in a bank account, the bank account part and the credit card part are the hardest things I think to teach because when it's cash, it's there. It's all out in front of you. It's in your pocket, whatever it is. And that's all you have until more cash comes in. That's a small piece of advice that I give people who are struggling with budgets, especially when it's attributable to a specific expense. Mm-hmm. If you want to stick to a budget on something, maybe pull out, if it's $100 a month or $200 a month, that you say, I don't want to spend more than this on meals out or groceries or whatever it is. Just take out that cash and live on that for the month. And that is a real way of seeing how much you got left over.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Because you go, once that's gone, I'm done. I don't go out to eat anymore. Or
right.
I can't buy any more hats from Lids.
Well,
pressure. Like, okay.
Yeah.
$300 per month for hats.
Right.
And then I'm done, right?
Yeah. But if you're halfway through the month and you have a quarter of it left, it definitely makes you reassess and you're like, well, all right, I got to stretch this for the next half of the month.
Yeah, that's really smart.
Yeah.
That's a really good piece of advice, especially for kids going to college or something, to go, here's your $200. This is what you eat on for the week.
Right.
Manage it properly. It's a great way to do that.
The analogy of my brother's mentality about the cash in the envelope and going to Toys R Us. He went through it quick, but he didn't have to pay all the other bills, so he could. But, once you have these expenses and the budget, you can't necessarily blow it all at once.
Right.
I mean, unless it's a budget on, a discretionary thing that isn't food or whatever. Maybe it is hats or clothes or whatever. Set yourself a budget, and then if you've used it, you've used it.
Right.
And as long as it's not something required to live,
right.
That's a great way of monitoring that. Because it's easy for that stuff to get away from us.
It is, and it is hard. I remember being really, really broke when I lived in New York and not having the money to eat. And I would incur credit card debt to eat,
right?
And then I would go, well, I have to have it.
Yeah.
So I'll figure out this debt later, but I have to eat.
Yeah.
When really what I should have been thinking is maybe you can't afford to live in New York.
Yeah. Right.
Maybe you should be going to Hoboken or New Jersey. Maybe why are you staying in the city if you can't afford to feed yourself?
Yeah.
Maybe you should reevaluate what you're doing. I know not everybody has the ability to do that. Some people can't really do that. People, especially in rural parts of the country, don't have opportunities to get jobs to better themselves or increase their pay, and they are living very minimally already. So I know that some people don't really have that luxury, but
yeah, I mean, it's definitely assessing and living within your means because, we all have to plan for our futures and, setting money aside, whether it's for retirement or just for savings for that thing that we don't know that we're going to have to spend money on, the car breaking down or something. We all kind of have to do it, and living within your means, whether it's having to reassess where you can afford to live because you're dipping into savings or incurring debt just to eat, something's out of whack there, right? There's not a balance.
Yeah. It's a red flag.
Exactly.
It's a red flag. Yes. I just had this thought. You know how my dad saved for his retirement? Leo, you're going to die. he started buying big block motors for Ford trucks.
Okay.
And he had amassed like 40.
Okay.
So he said these big block motors for Ford trucks were worth like $1,000 each, right? The storage facility he had them in burned and they melted. And all
Well,
of
what was he buying them really inexpensively, and they were worth so much more, so he was accumulating them like gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was compounding interest.
Yeah.
Via Ford big block motors. And they melted. And now he
Flammable.
has no retirement. His retirement melted in a fire.
Yeah.
And I feel so bad.
Yeah.
No, it shouldn't be laughing. But what a fascinating thought.
It's a mental. Yeah, I mean, you know.
Funding your retirement. I'm just going to keep buying all these big block motors.
Who was going to buy all these big block motors from him? It's my, like...
I don't really know, but it was a brilliant plan.
Sure. Yeah.
So maybe you should, in addition to buying big block motors, just get an IRA, right?
Yeah, or even just a savings account if you don't even want to contemplate like the complexity of a retirement account. Just savings. Put some money away in savings and let
super
that.
easy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I read in this magazine, Real Simple, which is an expert magazine on finances.
Okay.
You know, Real Simple. No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's all about, housekeeping and stuff. But they said in your 30s, you should put 5 to 6% of your pre-tax dollars toward your retirement and have your employer match it, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
And with every raise in pay, you should increase your payment on your loans to get your loans down in your 30s.
Sure.
That you should put at least $50 a month to your retirement, even if you're just like destitute.
Sure.
And what is this?
I don't know. The blanket statements like this take away, for me, it's great. The underlying advice in it is fantastic.
Right.
But I mean, like I said, I've always had the mentality of, especially if there's, to go back to retirement, if there's a matching situation, that's free money that's on the table for you that your company's willing to match.
Right.
Take advantage of that all day, right?
Yeah.
Not everyone has debt. Some people have more debt than others. Paying down your debt is a fantastic idea. These percentages, it's all dependent upon how you live, because someone may look at that and they make a good living and they spend all their money on this discretionary stuff and they go, yeah, but I'm putting 5% away.
Good point.
Maybe you could put away more, right? And you won't have that feeling of, well, I'm making good money. Where's it all going? I'm doing what I'm supposed to, but I don't match the benchmark of my other friend who has a lot more in savings, but they make less. Well, it's all relative, staying within your means. The most common thing, I think, is when people start making incrementally more money, obviously your expenses kind of start to rise because you go, well, now I can't afford the apartment in the city or whatever it is.
Right.
And your spending creeps up. And that's why I say I think the habit of monitoring your finances year over year or month over month, paying attention to it to go, man, I spent so much more than I did last year. Where did it all go? Okay, well, my taxes went up because I started earning more. Oh, but I got a nicer car and it was a gas guzzler and I had to pay more insurance and I got a nicer apartment and I had to pay insurance on that. And all these things start creeping up. Yeah. And I started, because I got a little bit of a bump, I decided I needed to dress a little bit nicer. And so I spent more money on clothes. It all starts adding up. And so paying attention to that stuff helps you kind of keep that in check. And I think having a percentage-based mentality is great because it grows with it. But I would always try and focus on, okay, where are these things going to impact me the most? Where should I pay attention to? And it is the retirement or college savings or general savings for that emergency or, all of those things. And try not to be so focused on, well, I have to keep up with peers or friends or society in terms of what I should have that isn't necessarily going to benefit you in the future because, you get the nice car lease that's gone in 3 years and you got to shell out more money for it and all that stuff. So at the end of the day, if you're monitoring your bank account, that's going to stay there. Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about college because we don't have a college savings fund for our
Right,
kids.
right.
We just have savings accounts. So what is the benefit of a college fund? Why would anybody have one as opposed to like, what was that account called? The index account? Was that what
An
it's
index
called?
account? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a 529 account is a college savings account. And it's a phenomenal thing. And it's great to start as early as possible. Money goes into it, not tax-free, but the growth of the money within it effectively is tax-free because let's say you put that same dollar into it now and it's $1 after taxes. Hopefully it grows for 18 years and then your child goes to college. You then get to use that money to pay for the college. Now that dollar may have grown to be $5 or $10 or $20 in that 18-year span. You didn't pay taxes on that $19 growth.
I see.
And then you get to use it all to pay for college.
Okay.
And now you get to use it on private school and things like that. And there are limitations on it, but it's part of the tax change and all that. But
You mean like high school, private school?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, there are limits on that, but that was a new addition to some of the tax law changes that just recently happened, so you can take advantage of it. But the real advantage is the growth over time, right? And so if you have a child, that's another thing that I would say for that point in time in someone's life, try and put as much away as possible early because to tie into what you said before, that index fund, generally speaking, these college savings account, they are geared towards growth, kind of aggressive growth really early on because the concept is you're not going to touch it for 18 years.
Right.
If you start it when your child is born,
Right.
you're not going to touch it for 18 years. So it can be really aggressive and it'll do this with the market, right? Up and down. And then as it gets closer to that 18-year mark, it starts becoming less and less aggressive. And it's invested in an index that doesn't follow the market so closely and is less variable with the ups and downs of it. So if there's a market crash, hopefully if it's, near the time of needing it, it's not, all the value of it isn't just tanking.
Right.
It's going to kind of stay firm at that time. But early on, it's going to do all that stuff.
Right.
But you put it in early and get the benefit of it later on. It's a phenomenal thing to do.
It is.
Yeah. But you have to kind of start early.
Yeah. So we just were too late.
A little late.
Yeah, a little late. So then let me ask you this. Say we started when Georgia was born.
Yeah.
And if Isla goes to college, I'll be really shocked.
Okay.
So we say we have $100,000 for college.
Yeah.
We only spend $40
Yeah.
on Georgia's college. What happens to the $60?
So you can use it on siblings, like right if you start.
Yeah, no, but
for
what
one.
if we were done? Everybody's out of
Okay.
school, and
So
I got
everyone's out of
60
school.
left
so
over.
then you can use it for other family members. It can flow through to other people and take advantage of it that way. I've never
Had that happen?
I've never had it. I've never had it happen for anyone that I've seen. But the flip side of it is, I'd have to look it up. But I think there's just you would pay a penalty or something if you took it out for non-use of that. Right? Let's say you had no use for it. I think you would just take it out and presumably pay tax or some sort of penalty. But I'd have to look it up because I've never actually encountered it.
You probably have to deal with the growth.
Yeah, deal with the growth. There's something. So it's not just free money back to you. You're not using it for its intent in the account.
Right.
But I'm fairly certain you can flow it through to another family member or, a cousin or someone else in the family. Yeah, that's how you'd probably want to try and use it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if you're really late to the game? What if you're 50 and you're just now able to start investing in your retirement? What do you do then?
Well, so there are things set up. There are catch up, so you can pay a little bit more into your retirement once you hit a certain age.
Oh, okay.
So you can put a little bit more into it, but it's never too late, right? Because there is still a benefit. Let's say you're 50, you've still got, maybe 15 years before you retire, whatever your goal retirement age is. You still got 15 years. That's a few, cycles of the market and all of that. So you should still be putting away as much as possible. I mean, if you're in your 50s, maybe you're in that kind of peak earning cycle and you have more to put away, hopefully. Or paying down your debt. There are all these things that, there are variables to what is going on in your life at that time.
Right.
But I think the advice is true no matter what age you are, is if you're starting, just get started. That's the hardest thing. If you haven't and now you're nervous about whether you should, just start at any time, right? Start this year and put away as much as possible, whatever that is.
Right.
There are limitations on what you can put in anyway for all of us. We're all limited.
Right.
It just depends on what type of account you have, what your company offers or doesn't offer. But if you're able to put in the maximum, put in the maximum. If you can't afford to put in the maximum, put in what you can. And
as much as you can.
Yeah,
right?
It all starts adding up. But it's something for the future. And I think that's where a lot of people they feel discouraged, or they feel bad that they haven't. So why start now? Is it really going to make a difference? How much can I really accumulate in 15 years or 5 years or whatever?
Yeah.
But there's still savings in there to be had because it's going in tax-free in some instances, and you are putting money away for the time when you need it.
Right.
So
it's never too late.
Never too late.
And there's no negative to starting now.
Right.
Right? No
Yeah.
negative. So then if my dad had sold all his big block engines and had his $40,000 and decided he wanted to open a retirement account, where would he go? Can he go to Bank of America and open a retirement account?
Yeah.
You can go to any bank?
I mean,
pretty much?
I wouldn't say any, but pretty much, yeah. I mean, most banks have they have some sort of vehicle for investing, and if they don't, they'll refer you. And be pretty certain that they'd have some ability to refer you to open some sort of retirement account, and they'd normally be happy to help you do it.
I'm sure, right? They want your money.
Another
But
account.
I think that is another problem, is that they go, oh, I don't even know how to start to do that.
Right.
Well, it is that simple. I mean, our Bank of America right here on the corner has an investment officer.
Yeah.
And he works for Merrill Lynch.
Right.
But he's in the Bank of America. So
Yep.
you can walk in and you're take a left inside the building, and there he is. And he can set up all different kinds of accounts, right? They have probably the index account. I don't know.
An index fund is what we were talking about the other day that I think one of your friends told you about. And, that is kind of a very simplistic and smart way of investing. If you really don't, the stock market is a whole rabbit hole of information that I think makes a lot of people's eyes cross. The majority of us, right?
Yeah.
There are so many complexities, and I think, you walk into the Bank of America and Merrill Lynch guy, and they start talking about numbers and interest rates and market rates and, all of these things. Your eyes cross because it's not embedded in us, right? And so something like an index fund, it's really just gonna follow the market. And, in general, historically, the market has gone up, right? If you looked at when it started and where it is today, over time it goes up, and there's all the ups and downs. Not everyone has the stomach for the downs, right? Everyone thinks about the ups and, gosh, I should be investing because so-and-so talks about investing all the time. I'm always wary of the person who talks about all these great stock picks that they have. But the index fund is, it's that general thing. If you just Googled, the S&P 500, you'd see a chart with a line that's going up from the beginning of time until now. And that's generally the thought process behind an index fund. It's an investment in a bunch of stocks that make up that index, and it follows it. And so,
and what's the difference between that and a mutual fund?
Well, a mutual fund isn't different. I mean, an index fund can be a mutual fund. It can be a mutual fund that is it's called an index fund because it follows that index.
Okay.
There are other mutual funds that are tech funds, right? They follow only technology stocks all sorts of funds, and that's generally what people see in their retirement. If someone's offered a 401k from their company, they're normally given a list of funds for their invested retirement funds to be invested into,
right?
Because it's normally not just in cash,
right? So
they pick a fund, and it's like small cap, mid cap, all these phrases that we go,
I don't know what that means.
Yeah.
Is that a hat?
Yeah.
A small cap? I don't know.
And so, like an index fund is one of those options. And some of them have, what I think are great is similar to what we're talking about college, and that timing, there'll be a fund in there that is timed to your expected retirement age, right? And it'll have that year in it. And that fund will slowly get out of the risky stuff and into more conservative stuff the closer it gets to that retirement year. Yeah. Those are great. Yeah, and it sort of gears toward, and then you don't have to think about it too much, because I think most of us are, again, our eyes cross when we start thinking about it too much, and then you start going, gosh, am I doing the right thing? This one went down. I must be doing it wrong. All these people brag about the things they're doing right. No one brags about the account that lost money this year, right?
Well, as you're saying that, I thought to myself, I'll just start thinking, I'm so dumb. I don't even know what he's talking about. I'm so dumb. But I think most people feel that way.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm not dumb. This is just not something I'm even interested in.
Right.
If I were interested in learning the stock market, I guarantee you I would know all about it.
Exactly.
But I don't care about that shit at all. So then I listen, like our friends that we open ourselves up to talk financially. The husband knows so much about the stock market, and he starts talking to me about it, and I go, I am so freaking dumb. I am so dumb. I don't even know half of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I think most people are afraid that they're really dumb. So the simplest thing to do would be to walk in the Bank of America or your bank of choice and say, I need to start a retirement fund.
Right.
Help me do it.
Yeah.
And
or if you have retirement and then you go, but I've got this other extra cash.
Right.
And maybe I have a house as well, or I don't, and I want to save for a house. How do I invest in the stock market? And that person, hopefully, I think most of us get nervous because you maybe don't inherently trust that person, or they seem shady or something. And that's the thing that I think puts most people off, because I don't know how am I paying this person?
Yeah.
Or how are they making money? They must be making money. There's something I don't know.
Yeah.
And they're just taking my money and happily making it grow. That's impossible.
Right.
And I think that's off-putting to a lot of
people. So then how do they make their money?
Well, I mean, hopefully they're transparent about fees or what they're making, but they're not always. So you have to find someone that you trust, right? And reputable. And a lot of us get referrals, right? That say, my friend uses this person, they referred them, so that's why I'm going with this person. I think the most important thing is that you're able to talk to them openly, and you're not afraid to ask the questions that you have to be able to say, listen, I feel dumb for asking, but X, Y, Z.
I'm asking anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's part of the reason why I enjoy what I do so much, is because I do everything I can to open up that avenue and say, you can ask any question. My goal is to make you understand everything that you have going on in your life,
right? So
that you can not feel dumb, or you feel like you have a resource to ask.
Right.
I don't have the answer to every question, but like I said, I have resources, and I am at least comfortable enough to, I want to educate myself so I can answer the questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you've been amazing and fabulous.
Thank
and
you.
Very transparent with everything. I know people are very suspicious.
Oh, super suspicious.
Really? You really let them run all your money? I'm like, there's some checks and balances.
Yeah.
They don't. I'm not like eyes closed. I don't know what's happening. There's certain things they can't do without me.
Oh,
and so there. And every time I ask a question, I have evidentiary proof. There's no like, oh yeah, we did that last week. Sorry, I never told you. There's some paper trail for everything. It was like couldn't be more transparent.
Well, unfortunately, there are some not so transparent people in my industry that kind of give it a bad name, and it's really unfortunate. So my company, we do everything we can to try and be as transparent as possible and show all the checks and balances that we put in place, because there's a huge amount of liability if we weren't. And some people do just want to close their eyes to it and say, like, just do it. I don't want to know about it.
Right.
Just, pay the bills and make sure I'm saving money. And I don't get it, so I don't want to. And those are the challenging ones to go, how do I educate this person and inform them so that one day they don't go, wait a minute, I've had my eyes closed. Is everything kosher? And so that's the scariest part for me to anyone who does do that, is I go, no. I want to empower you with as much information and knowledge as I can,
right,
in a way that doesn't make you close your eyes and cringe and make your eyes cross and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, I think that's probably what happens with a lot of big stars that got ripped off by their business manager.
Right.
So they're buying cases of wine that are $100 a bottle once a week, and they're going, wait, what? I had to pay for that? You mean I was paying for that? And you never looked at your
it's
stuff?
like I didn't even know that was an issue, or and in some cases they have a point in saying, well, you didn't tell me on a weekly basis what I was spending. And in other cases, it's like, well, I'm trying to push this towards you, and you're not listening. You don't want to know about it.
Right.
And, so it's I think there's two sides to all those stories.
Yeah, there are. Bert had that with his previous business manager. I feel like all of a sudden he's like, yeah, and you're broke.
Yeah.
But Bert never opened an envelope. The guy
Right.
sent him a packet every month going, here's how much cash you have. Here's how much you spent. Here's how much is left over.
Right.
And Bert just never the envelopes would just pile up in the corner.
Yeah.
And I go, well, at some point you have to go, baby, that's your fault.
Yeah.
You should have opened the freaking envelope.
Well, it's the person who doesn't want to open the mail.
Doesn't want to open the mail.
If it's good news, you want to open it. But if it's slowly saying, hey, you're spending more than you're making, you stop wanting to open that envelope.
Yeah.
Right? And then it starts piling up. My goal always is to say, okay, if you're not opening the envelope, will you open an email? Will you open a text? Will you answer my phone call?
Right.
Or I'm going to come and knock on your door and say, hey, here's
Let's
what's
have a
going on.
talk.
Good or bad.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I like to deliver the good news better than anything. But sometimes there's bad, and you got to be able to
do that too, huh?
Yeah, I got to force that on you too, because I don't want you going, well, I didn't know, so we just kept spending.
Right.
Well, that's not good for anybody. So
a few minutes back, you talked about, hey, I noticed I'm not hitting my benchmarks. Well, what are the benchmarks? What are those?
Well, I think we all set different. I think the longer life goes on, I learned that financial benchmarks are not necessarily the most fulfilling ones, right? You can always say, like, I want to make X dollars a year. And I think everyone starts off doing that and saying, I want to by X age, I want to be making this much. And, it hurts when you don't. And then sometimes you reach them and you're like, well, that's not as fulfilling as I thought it was going to be. Because now I'm paying more in taxes and, whatever. And you're accumulating stuff. And I don't know. My mentality's changed a lot on it because, I just see, I'm exposed to a lot, I guess. And that's the fortunate side of what I do. I'm exposed to success and failure and seeing these goals and benchmarks. So I try and talk to people about setting different kinds of goals. Success will come when you're doing something that you're passionate about.
Right.
There's so many examples of that. And it's not just to the entertainment industry. I mean, it's to everybody. If you do what you're passionate about, you're going to put the most effort into it, and thoughtfulness and all of that.
There's a great book I read in my 20s called Do What You Love and the Money Will Come.
Yeah.
And that's true.
Yeah.
If you just do what you love, the money will come. It may not be a gazillion dollars, but the money will come. It will come.
Yeah. And that's the hardest. It's easy to say that when you're in that moment, but not when you're leading to that moment, right? Because sometimes when you do something you love, it doesn't pay off immediately.
Right.
And it's tough. I think a lot of comedians can relate to that.
Yes.
Right? But that, I think benchmarks, back to your question, goes to my point about paying attention to what you're doing and what you're saving. And I think that is a really rewarding thing to see. Like if you have a chart that just shows how much you're saving, seeing that go up is a phenomenal thing. And it's rewarding to go like, okay, I'm making more than I'm spending, or I'm putting money away. Those are I think the benchmark should always be
growth,
trying to grow, right?
Yeah. It should be growth.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a number.
Right.
Right.
And it's, there are the different benchmarks in life, whether it's whatever level of school, getting rid of debt, buying a house, getting married, having kids. There are all these significant points in your life that have some sort of financial impact to you, good or bad, that you kind of need to reflect on in those moments or leading up to them to go, okay, I think we're going to have a kid in a year, or 2 years, or 3 years, or, we're having a kid in a week. I haven't thought about it yet, but maybe a college savings fund is what we need to set up. How do we do it? And how much should we be putting away? Knowing what you're saving kind of guides you in knowing what you can start putting away.
Right.
So that's what I would say is in terms of benchmarks, it is these life events normally trigger those kinds of things. Wedding, you're going to get married. Are you paying for it? Who's paying for it? That's an expensive one, right?
Well, let's talk about that, because when you started making that list of getting out of debt, buying a house, getting married, having kids, paying for a wedding is one of those in there.
Yeah.
But what happens after that? I think most people's thought process stops with having a kid. Like when Bert and I talk about this from time to time, when our kids are gone and we're really old, we kind of want to live in a retirement community.
Okay.
Like, we want to live with other people our age.
Right.
I don't know that I want to be in a house by myself with him all day long.
Right.
When he's retired.
Yeah.
Love the guy, but I may need a little more variety.
Yeah.
And he definitely will need more variety. So, I'm talking like when we're 80.
Yeah.
But that's another benchmark, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
To sell your house and what you do with the money from your house. And so what happens after the kid benchmark? What should the benchmarks be after? Not should, but what are good maybe things to envision? Like your college fund for your kids?
Yeah, I mean, when you are planning to have kids or have kids, maybe you already have kids and you're early on or later on and you want to start, you're saying, gosh, college is expensive.
Yeah.
And there are all different levels of it, but the college savings is a great one to wrap your brain around early on. Hopefully you didn't go into debt from your wedding. But
well, you didn't go into debt for your wedding.
I didn't go into debt for my wedding. No, luckily, I have a fantastic wife who was able to throw it all together miraculously, impressively. But so I think college savings is a great one because it's something that's going to impact people. But then where are you in terms of your house, right? Some people are planning for a house, and that's maybe a benchmark, whether you have it or not. Then it's paying it off, right? And do you want to make additions to it? Is this your long-term home or a short-term home?
Right.
You can look at your house as an investment, and if it's a short-term thing, are you buying it at the right time in the market that suits where you want to go in life, right? You have young kids. Are they going to outgrow the house, and do you need to add on to it, or do you need to buy a bigger one in whatever span of time?
Right.
Are you going to add on to your family? Are you going to have more kids? Do you need to take care of a parent? So all of these things.
That's another one. Take care of a parent. That's something else that's kind of a benchmark. Because
absolutely.
Now that all those big block motors are gone, I don't know that may be that we have to pick up the slack of those big block motors. Not that 40 grand would have gotten him that far in retirement anyway,
right.
But that is something I think that we don't plan for.
Yeah. And it's something you kind of, you I'm not going to say you should, but it's definitely something to have in your mind,
right.
Because knowing whether your parents have retirement savings or not is going to impact you heavily, probably. I think most of us.
Yeah.
Are they going to live with you? Or are they going to live in a retirement home? Can they afford it?
Right.
All these things that, they can be very expensive or they can be very consuming in your own life. So planning for that as early as possible, I think, is great. And sometimes it's daunting to think of all of these things and that it's, how am I going to afford all of it? And
right.
I think it's more about planning it out and saying, okay, well, how far down the road is that? And we're all going to get impacted by things that we don't expect and can't plan for. But I always think mentally, if you can be prepared for it ahead of being financially prepared for it is at least a good step to make. To
right.
go, okay, in the future, what is my plan? What would I like it to look like?
Right.
And does that align with what my parents or whomever
with reality a little bit.
Reality. Yeah.
Some of it is about reality.
Absolutely.
The reality is we're probably going to have to take care of my dad in some capacity.
Right.
My in-laws are totally fine. They have retirement fund beyond, they're
right.
fine. But my dad, the reality is that's probably, I'm an only child. It's me or bust. So,
right.
That is that. I don't know that people they don't open the mail. don't necessarily want to look that
don't wanna
far
think about
ahead. And to look at your own health care, most people have some kind of health issue at some point when they get to advanced age. And how do you plan for that? Our neighbor had emergency abdominal surgery just out of the blue, and she's in her 70s, and her kids are like, oh my God, now everything's upended. And it took them a little while to get everything together so that they could get a home health care person that's helping her rehabilitate. And if you plan for that, I think it's a little better.
Yeah. Well, and then then you go down that rabbit hole of, okay, is that an insurance thing? Do I need to get
Wait, they have insurance for?
Yeah.
You mean
like long-term care?
They
right?
do?
Yeah. So you can start planning for that where because that's another very expensive industry that's growing and growing because of the population, but it's, people need assisted living, right? And you go into an assisted living home, or you need in-home care, someone to come in and take care of you, in some instances 24 hours a day. Maybe you don't want your spouse to be the one that has to do that.
Right.
And you can plan for it, and it's not cheap or inexpensive necessarily, but it can be inexpensive relative to what the alternative will be in the future.
Right.
Right. And it can wipe out your savings pretty quickly.
Right.
At that level. So, and you don't know what it's going to be.
Right.
But I think for most people, some form of assisted living is going to be required at some point in your life, and to plan for it in the present only really benefits you for the future. So it's definitely another rabbit hole to go down of insurance and planning. And
we definitely need to plan for someone to take care of Bert.
Right.
I'm not taking care of Bert when he's all crotchety and stinky like that, because he's going to be a pain.
That's our next meeting.
That's our next meeting. But do like regular insurance policies take care of any of that?
It depends. I mean, you have to look at
policy.
your own policy, but generally speaking, they're getting carved out now because they have these dedicated long-term care policies and assisted living policies that are offered. Some companies offer those supplemental insurances that you can get on, but I would certainly look into it. If that conversation we just had alone sort of sparks in your mind of, wow, what is that? Just, you can talk to your insurance agent or some sort of, generally anyone who handles life insurance is probably going to know a lot about this and can help you out.
And it's called long-term care
Long-term
insurance?
care, yeah.
Okay.
But it's worth looking into, and it may be daunting, in terms of the price tag. But if you start digging into, over time, what the costs are now and what they're planned to be 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years from now, with inflation and expected costs, it's kind of scary and astronomical what it's planned to be.
It's scary.
Yeah. But all this stuff is scary to people, and it's reality. And I think if you can take the fear out of it and go, okay, it is what it is. How do I plan for it, right? And just try and say all the dollars that you're earning today are not for today, right?
Right.
Try and plan that, a good chunk of your earnings today are for protection in the future and for, comfort and all that stuff in the future. And maybe don't focus too much on today. It's great to live in the now and appreciate today, but try and put a little bit of planning into it.
Have a little discipline, right?
Yeah.
Our little Gen Xers.
Yeah.
Like, we got $100.
Yeah.
It's burning a hole in my pocket.
Exactly.
I think the millennials tend to be a little more frugal than we are, and rightfully so.
Right. Yeah.
They lived through the crash. It was kind of scary, our real estate crash. I just thought of something.
Well, trying to buy a home now, speaking of that, I mean, anyone trying to buy a home now, it's incredible. It's a daunting task, I think, for most people now, early on in life, who haven't bought that first home or are looking at when they could potentially. And that is a daunting feat to think about accumulating enough savings to put down
it's insane.
on a house, right? I mean,
it's insane.
It's insane, yeah. We're talking about, Los Angeles, California, which is one of the worst places, but not the worst, certainly. But I think across the country, even it is still a daunting task for most young people.
It is. It's scary.
Yeah.
So my magazine said, by 67, you should have about 10 years of your salary in retirement or savings or in some capacity. What say you to that, mister?
That sounds great. Again, I think it depends on your lifestyle and how much you think you're going to cut back. I have clients that I talk about, the reality of impending retirement, right? And that can be a very exciting thing. Retirement can be extremely exciting if you've kind of planned for it, right?
Yeah.
Instead of this daunting thing that's scary.
Yeah.
Try and make it an exciting thing of like relief that, work is going to reduce and you get to do a lot more time doing the things that you like. Hopefully you like what you do, but I think the amount has to be dependent upon what you want your lifestyle to be in retirement. Are you going to scale it back, and is it going to be simplified? Some people, that is a harsh reality of retirement. It is going to be, okay, based on what you have, here's how long it'll last you if you spend this much.
Right.
And that's just the math behind it,
it's
right?
just
It's the math we can all do.
Math, yeah.
Divide it by how much you spend a year, and that's how many years you have.
Right.
And I think that is probably the part that scares most people, because then you're putting a finite amount of time on
your
it.
life, right?
Yeah.
That is scary.
So it's scary. I think that we're all nervous and scared by that thought of doing the math on our lifespan,
right?
Or how long we can afford to live.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
10 years and then you're dead.
Yeah. Right. You have 10 years worth of salary. Okay. The amount you make hopefully isn't the amount that you spend. So maybe that 10 years of salary, my accountant brain goes to, okay, well, salary at what point in your life? Was it your salary when you were the peak earnings, or is it the salary when you're retiring and you've scaled everything back? Is it the salary of when you started?
You're so specific.
I ask all these. I know, I'm too specific.
That's what makes you good at your job.
I know, I guess. But I think, again, it's a great benchmark to get the brain cells moving on what retirement is going to cost you, right?
Right.
I think what you said is phenomenal. If you know you want to live in an assisted living home or retirement home or retirement community, they're all different levels of it. You can go buy a condo in a retirement community that is still very much, it's you're
independent living.
Independent and all of that, but it's got a golf course,
right,
or they've got tennis courts and all these things, and
bingo on Tuesdays,
and dances and all that stuff. Right? It sounds fun. But then it's okay. How much does that cost, and how much does a condo in that place cost, or to rent, or to have all the amenities of it? So you start putting a reality of the number behind what your expectation is, and then you can start going, okay, how long is that going to last?
Right.
And so it gets scary because you make it finite, but the goal is to try and make that less and less scary as you get closer to it, so that the earlier you can start on that, the better.
Right. Okay, so we started a trust. We put all of our stuff in a trust.
A living trust.
A living trust. So our home is in the trust, and our bank accounts are in the trust. Yeah. And so then if something were to happen to us, our kids just become the trustees when they're 18.
Everything will flow through to them. I mean, the concept behind that is just protecting everything from going through probate, essentially.
Right.
California probate can take 6 months, 2 years. It just depends on the complexity of the assets. But that means that they receive the assets faster than California going, okay, what did you have that they're going to get? Let's make sure fees are paid and taxes are paid and all of that.
Right.
If it's in the trust, it's a more expeditious process.
Right.
It doesn't have to necessarily go through probate.
So for me, I went to a seminar at our local community college that talked about planning for your retirement. And she said the number one thing you should do as you approach latter life is put everything in a trust.
Right.
And I was overwhelmed
Yeah.
by that process. I just went, I don't even know what that means.
Right. Yeah.
How do you even start doing that? I don't even understand who do you call?
Yeah.
I had no idea where to start. Obviously, I called you
Yeah.
because you knew where to start. But other people, much like walking into the Bank of America and opening a retirement fund, how would a person do that? Because you don't have to be, I think it also is a misconception that you have to be wealthy to have a trust.
Right.
You just have to own, you guys have to
you
have
have
things of
assets.
value,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
property or
No, and-
boats or
And it's
big block motors.
something. Yeah. If you have a storage facility full of big black motors,
It could be in the
put them
trust.
all in the name of the trust. But yeah, it's not as complicated as it seems initially, and just trying to read about it can be a little bit daunting. But there are very simplified versions of it. It is not as complex as most people assume it is, and you need I would suggest you need an estate planning attorney to advise and kind of guide you through it, and because they're all varying levels of complexity of people's lives and what they want their trust to be, because it's everything combined. It's your will, it's your what's called a healthcare directive, right? What you want to happen if you were in the hospital and on life support, or whatever. You direct all those things, and it's hard conversations, as you know. It can be a difficult conversation to say, write down on a piece of paper what you want to happen in the event of your death, or in the event that XYZ happens. So going into it, being prepared for that kind of a conversation is number one. But an estate planning attorney should be able to help guide you through it, and it can be, some of it can feel painful, but if you go into it prepared, it can be a little bit less painful. And the whole concept is to try and protect your assets for the people that you want to leave them to.
Right.
Whether it is, your spouse, your children, your whomever it is in your life that you're leaving them to, just make life a little bit less complex for them. The same theory is behind can be one of the theories behind life insurance, right? Life insurance, people think, I'm going to get a life insurance policy for my child. Life insurance, generally speaking, is a way of protecting what you're leaving behind, and supporting the people that you're leaving behind.
Right.
Whatever that means to you. Some people need life insurance because they have all their money wrapped up in assets that aren't cash, but they're going to be taxed on them when you pass away. Whoever inherits them has to pay tax on it. That life insurance policy maybe is to pay that tax, or maybe a life insurance policy is to take care of them when you're gone.
Right.
It is literally for the people that you're leaving behind.
Right. A life insurance policy is really important, I think, to have, especially when you have children.
Yeah.
As soon as you have children, that's when we got ours.
Yeah.
We didn't have any life insurance, and then when we had Georgia, we were like, okay, we're insuring both of us because, God forbid, we both die in a plane accident.
Right.
What happens to her? And it really, when you get a life insurance policy young enough, it's not that bad. It's not very expensive. And even the trust, she told us in the seminar about how much it cost, and I almost fell on the floor. I was like, $5,000?
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
But I just went through losing my grandmother and losing my aunt, and my other aunt was the executor of both estates. So expensive.
Yeah.
And so much work and stress and upset and arguing and pain. And I thought, all of this could be eliminated if you just had it in a trust.
Well, yeah, you get to dictate what happens, and the goal, hopefully, is to make that process easy on the people that you're leaving behind and leaving this to.
Yeah.
If you see that firsthand, the kind of stress and anxiety that brings people.
It's awful.
Yeah, terrible. So,
it's really awful when really, my grandmother had a great deal of assets. She had a lot of land.
Right.
And a beautiful farmhouse. Not a lot of cash, but still that land. And it just took forever just because it went through probate.
Yep.
And when I watched the first one happen, that's when I said to Bert, okay, $5,000 is totally worth every penny.
Yeah.
I would pay $5,000 for my children not to have to do what my Aunt Carol did.
Yeah.
Like that, just think of it as a courtesy fee
Yeah.
that you know you don't have to go through that stress.
And by the way, I don't think it ended up costing you that much either. So,
I don't think it did. I think you're right, but that's what I thought in my brain.
Well, you went into it thinking that, so you were ready for that.
That was in my brain, yeah. Okay, so...
And there are less expensive. $5,000, I understand going into that, that seminar having some sort of figure to give people a guidance in what to expect, but it can certainly be less expensive.
Less, right.
Like you found out.
Yeah, ours was less expensive. You're right. Okay, I read another magazine.
Mm-hmm.
This was Women's Day.
Okay.
Also another financial guru.
Yep. I read it every day.
How to be a millionaire. You ready? Number one thing is to get rid of your debt except for your mortgage.
Okay.
Agree with that?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
To have 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash. That's what this
Nailed
magazine
it.
said. Okay, nailed that. Number 3 is to invest. Same thing you said. 401k or retirement funds. Put 15% of your pre-tax income in the first 401k, and then do the first in a 401k if you can, and anything over that in a Roth.
Well, and the trouble there is that you're limited. You're capped on what you can put in these things. So these percentages depend upon how much you're earning, right?
We're talking about like regular folks, most people in America, not not the 1%ers.
Yeah, I know.
The regular people, like the big block motor people.
Yeah, exactly.
Number 4, cut off your kids.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Isn't it? Cut off your kids as soon as they're done with college.
Yeah.
Is what it said.
Just 100%.
Just
don't support them at all.
Yeah, that's what it said. Cut off your kids.
I mean, I'm not there yet. I'm interested to see how you feel about that. If you're going to be that mercenary, I can't imagine that's an easy thing to do. But
yeah, have you met Bert Kreischer?
I know.
No, he's going to have a really hard time cutting off his kids.
Yeah, for sure. I can imagine. I think it's an easy thing to get carried away doing. I mean, I can imagine supporting your kids and not wanting to see them go through troubles, especially if you've experienced them, right? Can I afford my apartment situation? Then your brain, I think you've trained yourself to go, I never want my kids to feel that.
Right.
And then you want to support them even more so.
Somewhat, but I also know the value of standing on your own 2 feet and how that grows positive self-esteem, that it doesn't have to do with money. It has to do with you believing that you can handle yourself.
Yeah.
And I know people who parents still support them and they lack some of that belief.
Yeah.
And I think that's you've been given a great gift and robbed of another.
Sure. Yeah.
So part of it, and I did have this one friend who her family was extremely wealthy. They owned like a waste management type company, like gazillions of dollars. And she had a really successful job and decided she wanted to be a teacher. And she was like, it's really hard to live in LA as a single person on a teacher's salary.
Right.
And the parents were like, we're paying, you pay $500 a month rent and we'll pay the rest.
Yeah.
She had a reasonable 1-bedroom apartment. She wasn't living in a house. She lived in a reasonable 1-bedroom apartment. She wrote me a check for $500 when I was managing. Her parents wrote a check for the rest. And she taught school at a low-income Title I school in downtown LA and was the happiest people I know. And I've always thought to myself, if my kid did that, then I would support that.
Right.
You know, that's, to me, is different than my kids sleeping on the couch, playing video games, eating Doritos that I've bought and not pursuing something in life.
Yeah.
That's the balance too, is to kind of look at the big picture,
Well, and I think it's also shielding them from learning about the things that everyone kind of needs to learn in life, right? All the things that we're talking about, everyone kind of needs to experience and learn, and we learn them at different times. But I don't think you're necessarily doing anyone a favor, especially your kids a favor, if you shield them from learning why you have insurance, right? Car insurance. Having your child start paying for car insurance at whatever age that they do, it's a lesson that they learn when they get in an accident and that kicks in, or they learn the lesson of what type of insurance they had and it's insufficient, or, relate that to any example. They're renting something and don't have renter's insurance. The understanding of all these things and paying the bill for it, you start learning these lessons. And if someone's just doing it for you, and you never have to actually learn it or learn the ramifications of it, you are, you don't have a full understanding, I think, of life and what the requirements are of it.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's that line that you're talking about is a fine one, right? Where do you draw the line on, well, they're doing this, so I'll support them for it. They're not doing that, so I won't support them for it.
Right.
That's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
And how do you make sure they're learning the lessons that are going to, take them through the rest of their life when you're not there to help them with it?
Right. It is really hard. I always thought, well, if you're going to do it, that's the way to do it, the way my friend did it. She eventually got married, and they bought a house, and it's not happening anymore. And that would be the trajectory you would hope for,
right? I
would think. But I don't think it really happens for everybody.
Right.
That they their kids rely on their parents for so long. And it's harder too. I just heard this podcast that said children in the 50s far out-earned their parents. Right? Mm-hmm. Children of the 70s out-earned their parents of the 50s. Mm-hmm. Children of the 90s out-earned their parents, but not by as much.
Yeah.
And now they're not.
Right.
They're not out-earning their parents. So it's kind of, the balance is shifted where now, if you're of this generation that's just coming into your own, it's much harder to accomplish what generations before have accomplished.
Yeah.
And how does that affect your self-esteem?
Yeah.
How does that affect your value? Because you look to your predecessors to see how you're doing. That's how you gauge yourself. Oh, my dad bought a house when he was 25.
Exactly.
I'm 40. I still don't have a house.
Yeah.
I suck,
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's these these kind of benchmarks that we set, and you sometimes use your parents or your elders as those benchmarks to say, well, my parents had kids when they were X age, and they bought a house at X age. Mm-hmm. And, like I said before, buying a house now, I think it's daunting for anyone at any age where they're trying to buy a house for the first time. They go, man, I'm just not lining up. Right. And that goes to the insecurity we were talking about before, where you're trying to gauge yourself against your peers as a benchmark of where you should or shouldn't be in life. Mm-hmm. And it's a dangerous thing, because not everyone's situation is the same. Not everyone's goals are the same.
Right.
Someone may have a ton of retirement savings but not own a house. Right. And that's okay. Yeah. Someone may want a house so bad that they forego retirement savings until they have it. Right. And it's just everyone's decision of where, what they value and what they want. I think the house conversation is a fascinating one, because especially everyone in my age range they've always been talking about getting a house. That's always the first benchmark, right? And for whatever reason, I don't know what it was in my upbringing or schooling that kind of drove into my mind that having a house isn't necessarily the first benchmark. I understand the wealth accumulation you get with real estate. Mm-hmm. But it's not for everyone at a specific point in your life. Right. There's a lot of expenses that go along with a house, property taxes, maintenance. You got to buy a new roof, whatever it is, versus, maybe living in an apartment suits someone else's lifestyle, because they don't want those expenses. They want to stockpile as much money away as possible into retirement, right? So instead of paying for the roof, you put money into retirement. Right. Someone else put money into the roof and the house, accumulation of that wealth and paying down your mortgage. Maybe that's kind of your retirement savings that you have in your brain, because you'll sell that house and you made money on it, and that buys you a bigger house. Or you sell it because you're retiring and you want all that cash to live on. Right. There are all these different variables and thought processes that people can have that differ. Right. And so benchmarking ourselves against each other, I don't think is the smartest way to do it, because it creates insecurities, because you think that person's doing it that way. Am I doing it wrong because I'm not doing it that way? Right. And there are so many different ways of doing it, and priorities that people have. Right. Someone has kids, someone else doesn't. They have a college savings account. You don't necessarily need to have one. Right. You could set up a college savings account for your niece or nephew if you wanted to. Right. But I think sort of full circle is having that person that you can talk to about it, and not so much about benchmarking yourself against them, but having that discussion kind of like we're having, where you broaden your horizon of thought process about it and say, oh, I understand that thought process. How does it compare to mine? And should I shift it? Because that's interesting. Or I don't agree with it.
Right.
Here's why.
Right.
And maybe you enlighten somebody else to what you're doing. And maybe you're doing something right that you didn't even know all along.
Right. Yeah, it is good, I think, to have another person to talk to if you can just continue to run your own race.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
You just say, oh, you got a longer stride on this part of the track.
Right. Yeah.
That might be a good place for me to have a longer stride, but for the rest, I'm going to keep my little short stride.
And everyone,
So
is worried about how much they're making and benchmarking that against people as well.
Yeah.
Every career is different, and some
Which is
people
so
start
silly.
out quick,
Right.
but they cap out, and some people have a longer, it takes a little bit longer to make a little bit more, It's so hard to compare, and having, I think, the further we can get away from the culture of hiding those things, those facts about, what we make and what we save, I don't think it should be such an uncomfortable conversation, because we're all working to make a living, to pay for all the things that we need, the necessities. We're all, a house and a warm meal and good health is what we're all, I think, entitled to.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us to hide the fact that we're working hard for it to support, families and the people that we love and all of that.
I agree with you. I think it should be an open book. I think it is hard to culturally different. I did a podcast a week or so ago, came out about blue collar versus white collar mentality about certain things. And, it's very white collar to what do you do for a living?
Yeah.
And how much do you make?
Right.
Happens more in the white collar community than it does in the blue collar community, where those things are almost offensive to ask. That's offensive because, what I do and how much I'm worth doesn't matter. That's not how I value myself.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that's very valid.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't value myself by how much is in my bank account.
Right.
I value myself by how I treat people and how I think people feel about me in return.
Yeah.
So to me, that's where my value system lies. But I think if a blue collar person could add that piece to what they have and say, yeah, but how am I taking care of myself long term, and how am I taking my small job and taking some little piece of it and taking care of my future, because that's smart, not because that's evil because I have a lot of money,
right? Exactly.
But just that's wise and that's excellent self-care.
Yeah.
I think, I know in the community I grew up in, my two aunts had retirement. One was a nurse and had a 401k. One was a teacher and had a 401k.
Yeah.
And they invested heavily in their retirement. And when my one aunt passed away, she was very wealthy. And my other aunt retired. She had $1 million.
Yeah.
But everybody else, my dad doesn't even have a savings account.
Right.
His brother, no savings account.
Yeah.
And I think, what happens if something happens to you? Is it really that bad to be just a teeny bit white collar? Just a teeny bit. Like, you don't need to know what you do for a living, but maybe just have a savings account.
Yeah, something.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's finish our how to be a millionaire, and then we'll wrap it up. Track your net worth.
Yeah, I think that goes along with what we were saying before. I feel like we're nailing this list.
We are. We are so millionaire. We're not 100.
No.
We're 1 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it goes along with what we were saying before about, a good habit to get in is to monitor, whether it's, year over year, knowing what you're spending and making, or month over month, or being invested in it daily and being that obsessive about everything that's happening. But having some sort of system to be able to check yourself and gauge yourself and set, your own benchmarks, I think is really important. And whether it's your net worth or just knowing what you're spending and saving.
Right.
Net worth, fancy way of saying just everything you have in the bank and what you owe and what's the combination of all of it. And hopefully that should be growing over time. I think that should be the goal. I think
that should be shrinking.
Right?
Assets should be growing.
Exactly.
That's what should happen over time. Okay, there was a... Yeah, that's exactly what it said. All that you own minus all that you owe is your net worth.
Right.
So I think someone like my dad would go, I don't have no net worth.
Yeah.
But you do.
You do.
You own a lake
everyone
house.
does.
and you owe $5,000 on that lake house. So
Yeah.
there's your net worth. But there's a website in this magazine called chrishogan360.com/tools. And it is
Okay.
a net worth calculator.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps you set goals
Yeah.
too for your net worth. So that may be something really simple. Anybody could go in and go,
Right.
I own these things. I owe these things. Here's my net worth.
Yeah.
It may be very helpful. Quicken was always very
Quicken's
helpful for
great.
me too.
Yeah.
I started Quicken in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And used it until I turned it over to you.
Right.
I used Quicken and QuickBooks because, like you said, you can run a really quick, simple report and know your net worth in
Yeah.
2 minutes. It takes a little bit of, diligently
Yeah.
kind of putting in, like my Wednesdays when I paid my bills was the day I put my receipts into Quicken.
Yeah.
And now so much is digital. I'm sure you could just download it in,
downloads
right?
it, and yeah, if you
Yeah,
have
it gets
credit
it all
cards or
in
bank
there.
statements, it just downloads it and you categorize it, and it's great. I mean, it sounds like a sales pitch for it, but over time, if you're diligent about it and just keep track of it, it's kind of, it's the accountant talking. It's fun to be able to see what you spent on something 10 years ago and compare it to what you're spending now on that same, category or whatever. You see the trend in life, and you see that, maybe you kept it consistent the entire time, and that's phenomenal. For the most part, people, you start making more, you spend more. You make less, you spend less. It's interesting to see the flow of it all, and also to see what you spend maybe more than you thought you spent on. It may sort of shock you to see it. And I think that's the thing that people don't want to see. It's that mail that they don't want to open.
Yeah.
You don't want to see the thing that is your guilty pleasure, and maybe you're spending too much on it.
But you can't make changes without knowledge. I don't think if you're not aware of your behavior emotionally, financially, in any way, you can't make any changes. So it's just part of that piece of self-care and being healthy.
Yeah.
All right. Last thing is to live frugally. It says 94% of millennials live on less than they make.
Yeah, it's scary.
94%. That's a huge percentage.
Yeah.
To stick to a budget. And 93%, not millennials, millionaires. Duh.
Millionaires.
94% of millionaires live on less than they make. They stick to a budget, and 93% of millionaires use coupons.
That's interesting.
Use coupons.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a fun game, and I don't know if they're using coupons just as a broad term, but you look at credit card rewards programs.
Exactly.
Phenomenal,
It's a coupon.
right? It's a coupon. You're literally borrowing money, and as long as you're paying it off and not paying interest, it costs you effectively nothing.
Right.
You're not spending your own dollars.
Right.
And you can get cash back for it, or you can get a
Free travel.
airline miles or whatever.
Yep.
It's phenomenal.
Gift cards.
Phenomenal, yeah.
I mean, when you walked in here today, I was like, Halston said, great shoes. And I went, I bought them 50%
Yeah.
off. I don't buy anything for full price.
Right.
I just don't. I think
Yeah.
you can find it for cheaper.
Yeah.
I did not marry that person. However, I buy everything cheap because I go,
It's not cheap, it's inexpensive.
yes,
Boy,
yes,
that
you're
was
right.
drilled, that was drilled into me from an early age.
It's not cheap, it's
Oh, yeah.
inexpensive.
I'd be walking around whatever store it was, and I'd say to my mom, God, it's so cheap. And she'd smack my hand. It's not cheap, it's inexpensive. You'll offend them.
That's
Right?
because she's British.
Exactly.
And she's very proper. Well, okay. Is there anything that I left out that a layperson should know that they should do or take care of for their financial health?
No, I think that's like that list kind of summed up our entire conversation. I think living within your means is the message from that last comment. Knowing what you're making and knowing what you're spending. Know that you're spending less than you're making is a phenomenal thing. I think people get in trouble, especially people who maybe are paid where there aren't any taxes taken out of their pay. If they're independent contractors or what have you, and they don't know how much to put aside, and that's where it gets really important to put money aside, because you're going to have to pay those taxes, and you may not know exactly how much it's going to be, but you should get a gauge, whether it's from your last year's tax return or from your accountant or whatever it is. Try and get a gauge about how much of your earnings you spent on taxes, and you can look it up, go on the IRS website and just look at tax brackets and go, okay, I think I'm going to make X number of dollars this year. All right, it shows me a percentage of how much of that will be paid in taxes,
Right.
and put maybe a little bit more than that, because you're
Right.
going to pay state taxes, whatever state you're into.
Right.
So you can do a little bit of research. It's not too painful. or ask somebody. I mean, always try and ask the question. People can get themselves in trouble that way by not being ready for taxes. But I think the best advice is truly just being on top of it and spending less than you make.
Not being afraid to open the mail and take a look.
Mail, yeah.
Just take a look, and then you have an informed opinion, and you can make an informed decision.
Yeah, exactly.
On what to do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all your expertise.
Absolutely.
Did you have fun?
Had a great time. I love talking about this stuff. This is what I do.
I know. Well, you're really good at it. Really good at it.
I try.
Thank you for all you've done for us.
Absolutely.
To help us, keep our ducks in a row.
Yep.
Keep them in a row. Well,
Happy
thanks,
to.
Leo.
No problem. Happy to do it.